There comes a time in every person's life when they will be disrespected, misunderstood, or undervalued. In these moments, it's easy to react in anger, to fight back with words or actions. But let me tell you something important today. When people dishonor you, when they speak against you, when they walk away from you without a second thought, remember this: God sees all of it. God knows the hurt you feel. He knows the pain of rejection and the sting of betrayal. But hear this: God is never blind to your circumstances. In fact, He is working on your behalf in ways you cannot see. He's not blind to your silence. He does not overlook your calmness, and He will never forget your patience. When people disrespect you, do not lower yourself to their level. When they walk away, do not chase them, for some relationships are meant to end. Let them walk, let them leave. God has a way of showing you who truly belongs in your life and who is only there for a season. If they leave, don't be upset, don't be sad. For when one person walks away, God is preparing the path for those who truly value you to come closer. So God, in moments of disrespect, choose silence, choose peace. And while the world may try to make you feel insignificant, remember that God's plan for your life is much greater. There is a time and season for everything. And just because people leave your life doesn't mean God's plan for you has ended. It means He is setting you up for something better. If you wait for something better, just know that nothing will be better. Understand that God is always working in the background. He is active even when you cannot see His work. He is orchestrating things behind the scenes, setting up new opportunities, new people, and new blessings for you. It is in those moments of silence, in those moments of waiting, that God is doing His most significant work in you. He is building your character. He is strengthening your faith, and He is preparing you for the greatness that is about to unfold. So, my friend, the next time you face disrespect, don't panic. Don't react in haste. Take a moment to breathe. Be still. Wait for God's active mode to kick in. He knows the plans He has for you, and those plans are filled with hope, promise, and victory. When people walk away, let them go and wait patiently, for God is at work in ways you cannot yet understand. Remember, your silence speaks louder than your words. Your ability to stay calm, to walk away in peace, is a reflection of the trust you have in God's ability to handle your battles. He sees you, He knows you, and He is working on your behalf. Trust in His timing, trust in His process, and trust that what God has for you is far greater than anything or anyone that walks away. There will always be moments in life when you will face disrespect. It's inevitable. There will be times when people misunderstand you, when your intentions are questioned, or when others treat you in ways that you don't deserve. You may feel rejected, belittled, or even completely ignored. But let me tell you, this is a part of life's journey, a necessary part of growth and transformation. These challenges aren't sent to destroy you, but to build you, to refine your character, and to prepare you for the greatness that lies ahead. Disrespect comes in many forms. Sometimes it's in the form of harsh words. Other times it's through actions that speak louder than anything anyone could say. It can happen at work, in your family, in your circle of friends, or even in relationships you thought were built on trust and understanding. People may let you down. They may turn their backs on you or fail to acknowledge your worth. This is not something that is unique to you. It is something that everyone goes through at some point in their lives. But while the disrespect may sting, the key is not to allow it to define you. In these moments, it's easy to fall into the trap of self-doubt, to start questioning your value, or even to believe that you don't deserve better. But that is not the truth. The truth is that you are worthy, you are valuable, and the disrespect shown to you does not diminish who you are. It is simply a reflection of the person or people who are projecting their own insecurities, fears, or limitations onto you. When you are disrespected, it's important to remind yourself that no one's negative actions have the power to define your worth. People may treat you in ways that seem unfair or unjust, but the way they treat you doesn't determine your value. God's definition of you is far greater than anyone's opinion or actions. So even in the face of disrespect, you must remember who you are, stand firm in your identity, and not allow the negative behavior of others to shape how you see yourself. It's also important to remember that disrespect often comes with a lesson attached. The people who disrespect you may be sent into your life to teach you how to rise above, how to remain unshaken in your character, and how to trust God's process, even when it feels like the world is against you. These moments are not just opportunities for you to learn how to respond. They are also opportunities for you to grow in grace, patience, and wisdom. Disrespect is a universal experience. It is something that everyone will face at some point, but it's how you respond that matters most. Do you respond in anger, in retaliation, or do you choose a higher path, one of silence, patience, and trust in God's plan for your life? It's in these moments that your true character is revealed. When you choose peace over conflict, trust over doubt, and faith over frustration, you are not just surviving the moment. You are growing into the person God has called you to be. So remember, disrespect is not something you can avoid. It will come, and it may come in many different forms. But don't let it defeat you. Don't let it diminish your spirit. Instead, let it be a reminder that you are destined for greater things, and that God sees everything, including the disrespect you are facing. And most importantly, He is with you through it all, preparing you for something greater that lies ahead. In moments when you are disrespected, misunderstood, or mistreated, there is one thing you must always remember. God sees everything. He is not blind to your struggles or to the hurt you feel in those moments. While the world may turn a blind eye to your pain or dismiss your feelings, God is always watching, always aware, and always present. Nothing escapes His attention. He sees not only the actions of those who disrespect you, but He also sees your response, your pain, your patience, and your silence. God is not distant or unaware of what you're going through. He knows when you feel alone, when you feel rejected, when you feel misunderstood. He sees when you are crying in your room, when you are holding your head up high, even though your heart is breaking. He is there in the midst of your deepest struggles. There is no moment in your life when God's presence is absent. When people hurt you, God sees it. When they walk away, God sees it. And when you choose to remain silent, trusting in His ability to handle the situation, God sees that too. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are those we expect the least from. The ones we trust, the ones we love, the ones we have built relationships with. Yet, even in those moments, God is watching over you. He sees how they treat you, how they ignore your value, and how they choose to walk away. And He is not silent in response to their actions. God is working in the background, preparing something far greater for you than what you may be experiencing right now. And so, you see, God's awareness of your situation is not limited to just the moment you are in. His perspective is eternal. He sees the beginning and the end of your story, and He is already preparing the path ahead of you. While people may be quick to judge or dismiss you, God is slow to anger, full of mercy, and patient in His plans for you. He knows what you are going through, and He is already at work, even when you cannot see it. When others walk away or turn their backs, it might feel like the end of the world. But in those moments, it's important to remember that God is never caught off guard. He is never surprised by what others do to you. He knows who will leave, who will stay, and He is always in control. His plan for your life will never be disrupted by the actions of others. He is working on your behalf, even when you cannot see it. God's watchful eye doesn't just bring comfort, it also brings accountability. He sees the wrong done to you, and he will not let it go unnoticed. People may think they can hurt you without consequence, but God is the ultimate judge, and he will repay what is wrong in his perfect timing. You don't need to fight your battles in your own strength, because God has already seen what is being done to you. And in his perfect justice, he will make things right. Trust that he will handle what you cannot. In the silence of your struggle, in the moments when you feel alone and unseen, God is present. He is not absent in your pain. He is not blind to your heartache. God's eye is always upon you, and his heart is always with you. When others overlook you, God will never fail to notice. And in his perfect timing, he will bring forth a resolution, a solution, and a victory that will far exceed anything you have imagined. You are not alone, for God is watching over you, and his active presence is the assurance that you will never walk through life's trials without his help. In the face of disrespect, when others lash out, treat you poorly, one of the most powerful things you can do is choose silence. I know it's tempting to react, to fight back with your words, to show them that they can't get away with treating you this way. But sometimes the most effective response is the one that doesn't say a word. There is a strength in silence that many people fail to recognize, but it is a tool that, when used wisely, can bring incredible peace and victory to your life. Silence doesn't mean weakness. It doesn't mean that you are allowing people to walk all over you. On the contrary, silence can be a mark of strength, of emotional maturity, and spiritual wisdom. When someone disrespects you, they may be hoping to provoke a reaction, to draw you into their drama, to make you lose control. But when you respond in silence, you deny them that power. You are showing them that they no longer control your emotions, your reactions, or your peace. You take the power back, and you allow God to be the one who handles the situation. In moments of disrespect, silence can also be a moment of reflection. Instead of letting the anger and frustration boil over, silence allows you to pause, to think, and to respond from a place of calmness and clarity. It's in the silence that you can hear the still small voice of God, guiding you on how to respond in a way that reflects his love, his grace, and his wisdom. It's in those moments that you can remind yourself that this is not a battle you need to fight with your own strength, because God is already handling it for you. Many times, when people disrespect you, they are acting out of their own pain, insecurities, or misunderstandings. Their disrespect is not a reflection of who you are, but rather a reflection of where they are in their own lives. Choosing silence allows you to detach from their hurtful behavior and see the bigger picture. Instead of reacting from a place of hurt or frustration, you can respond with empathy, understanding that their behavior may be more about them than it is about you. God often works in the quiet moments, in the stillness. The silence that you choose in times of disrespect is not empty. It is filled with trust and surrender to God. You are saying, I don't need to fight this battle. I trust that God will handle it. I trust that he is at work behind the scenes, even when I cannot see it. The act of staying silent in the face of disrespect is an act of faith. You are placing your trust in God's timing, in his ability to work all things together for your good. You are saying, I don't have to fix this. God is already in the process of working this out for me. When you choose silence, you also protect your peace. Reacting in anger or frustration only gives power to the situation and the person disrespecting you. You allow their actions to dictate how you feel, how you think, and how you behave. But when you remain silent, You maintain control over your emotions. You refuse to let their disrespect rob you of your peace, joy, and emotional stability. You allow yourself the space to process the situation without being influenced by the negativity around you. When you do that, the result is that there is no negativity around you. Moreover, silence has the power to shift the atmosphere. Sometimes when you don't react the way others expect you to, it can cause them to reflect on their own behavior. Your calmness may serve as a mirror to their actions, forcing them to reconsider how they've treated you. And even if they don't recognize it right away, your silent strength can plant a seed of change in their heart. In the end, it's not about how they treat you. It's about how you respond that defines the situation. It's the act. God knows the power of silence. He himself has shown us the way. There were moments when he chose to be silent, to let people misunderstand him, to let his enemies speak against him, because he knew that the Father was at work. God didn't need to defend himself. And in the same way, you don't need to defend yourself in every situation. Let God do the defending. Let God do the fighting. And let your silence speak louder than any words ever could. Silence in the face of disrespect is not a sign of defeat. It's a sign of maturity, of wisdom, and of trust in God's ability to work things out on your behalf. It is in that silence that you allow God's active mode to take over. And you can rest assured that he is handling things in his way, in his timing, and for your ultimate good. So, the next time someone disrespects you, choose silence, choose peace, and allow God to work in ways that you could never do on your own. In those moments when others disrespect you, the tendency is often to react emotionally. Our flesh wants to lash out, to respond with the same negativity that we are receiving. But the true test of character comes when you choose not to act in that moment of disrespect. Instead of retaliating or trying to prove a point, you step back and trust that God is working behind the scenes. Even when it feels like nothing is happening, God's active mode doesn't always look the way we expect it to, and it doesn't always show up immediately, but it is always present, always at work, always working on your behalf. When you choose to walk away in silence, you are making a powerful decision. You are trusting God to take care of what you cannot. When someone disrespects you, there may be a temptation to try and fix things yourself, to prove to them that you are not someone to be ignored or mistreated. But when you trust God's active mode, you choose to step out of the situation and allow him to handle it. You trust that he sees the disrespect, that he knows the pain it's causing you, and that he is already working in ways you can't see, preparing the way for your elevation, your healing, and your victory. Sometimes we think we must act immediately in order to get results, to prove ourselves or to stop the hurt. But God's timing is perfect. He does not need our help in responding to every situation, because he has a plan far greater than anything we could orchestrate on our own. He knows the hearts of all people, and he understands the root causes of their behavior. When we choose to walk away in silence, we are placing our faith in his ability to address the heart of the issue, whether that means changing someone else's behavior or preparing us for a greater purpose. God's active mode is not always about making immediate changes in others. It's often about making changes in us. In those moments of disrespect, God is not only at work in the other person's heart, he is also working on yours. He is refining your character, teaching you patience, humility, and restraint. He is teaching you how to stand firm in your identity, how to keep your peace, and how to trust in his plan, even when things don't make sense. When you choose silence, when you walk away and trust God to handle the situation, You are allowing him to shape you, to mold you into a person who reacts not from a place of hurt or pride, but from a place of faith and trust in God's sovereignty. God's active mode is often in the unseen. When people disrespect you, when they try to tear you down, you may feel as though the world is against you. You may feel like no one is on your side, like no one sees what's happening to you. But God is always there, working things out in ways you cannot see. While you are waiting in silence, he is at work, bringing about justice, restoration, and redemption in his perfect way. So you need to look. You may not see the results immediately, but you can rest assured that God is always working on your behalf, behind the scenes, orchestrating everything in his timing. In our fast-paced world, we are used to instant results. We want answers, resolutions, and justice right now. But God's active mode doesn't always operate on our schedule. His work is often a slow process of growth, preparation, and healing. It's in the waiting, in the silence, that you are learning to trust, not just in his ability to act, but in his wisdom, his timing, and his ultimate plan for your life. You are being shaped into someone who understands that God's ways are higher than ours, that his timing is perfect, and that his methods are far beyond our understanding. How so? When you wait in silence, when you walk away and trust God, you are also trusting that he is preparing you for something greater. He is not allowing the disrespect, the mistreatment, or the hurt to define you. He is using it as a stepping stone to something better, something more powerful. You may not see it right now, but God is preparing you for a promotion, for a breakthrough, for a new level of influence, and for a deeper understanding of his love and faithfulness. Woo! Choosing to walk away in silence isn't just about giving God the space to work in others' hearts. It's also about giving God the space to work in your own heart. It's about choosing to trust that he is in control, that he is bigger than any disrespect you may face, and that he is leading you to something greater than you can even imagine. When you choose silence, you choose faith, you choose trust, you choose to believe that God is always at work, even when you cannot see it, and that he is actively working in your favor, preparing you for what lies ahead. When you walk away in silence, it is not just about allowing God to handle the situation. It is also about maintaining your peace. In a world filled with noise, distractions, and constant pressures, peace is a rare commodity. And once it's disrupted, it can take a lot of effort to restore. People who disrespect you, who bring negativity into your life, are attempting to disturb that peace. They want to provoke you, to get under your skin, to disrupt your inner calm, because they themselves may be unsettled, and misery loves company. But you have a choice. You can choose to let their actions dictate your emotions, or you can choose to preserve your peace even when faced with disrespect. In the silence, you reclaim your power. Your power is not in your ability to argue, to defend yourself, or to show the other person that they are wrong. Your true power lies in your ability to stay grounded, to remain centered, and to respond from a place of calm rather than reacting in anger or frustration. When you maintain your peace, you protect your emotional health, and you prevent the negativity of others from taking hold in your life. You are no longer at the mercy of their words or actions. You are free to move forward with clarity, wisdom, and emotional stability. Preserving your peace in the face of disrespect is not about ignoring the issue or pretending it doesn't matter. It's about understanding that your peace is more valuable than engaging in every argument, every confrontation, or every moment of disrespect. There will always be people who try to stir conflict, who seek to tear others down in order to elevate themselves. But you don't have to let them pull you into their chaos. Your peace is a gift, a treasure that you must guard diligently. And the more you practice walking away in silence, the stronger your ability to maintain that peace becomes. When you choose silence over confrontation, you're also choosing to preserve your mental and emotional well-being. The act of standing in your peace is an act of self-care. It's easy to get caught up in the drama, to feel the need to prove your worth or to show that you won't be disrespected. But in doing so, you sacrifice your inner calm. And when your peace is compromised, it affects every area of your life, from your relationships to your work, your health, and even your spiritual walk. Choosing silence allows you to hold on to that peace, to protect it from the negativity that others may try to impose upon you. This silence results in freedom, assurance, and peace. The eagle's voice, in the quiet moments when you resist the urge to react, you give yourself the space to assess the situation clearly. You allow yourself to see things for what they are without the distortion of anger or bitterness clouding your judgment. You recognize that disrespect is often more about the other person than it is about you. It's their issue, not yours. And by not reacting, you free yourself from taking ownership of their problems, their misunderstandings, or their insecurities. In the silence, you can focus on your own growth, your own peace, and your own path forward. You can see the situation from a higher perspective, where you understand that this moment does not define you. You are not a victim of disrespect. You are a person of strength, wisdom, and grace, who chooses to rise above. In choosing peace over conflict, you are also choosing to trust that God has your back. You are not left alone to fend for yourself in moments of disrespect. God sees what is happening, and He promises that vengeance is His, not ours. When you hold your peace, you allow God to fight your battles, to take care of the situation in ways that will bring the best outcome for you. When you choose silence and preserve your peace, you are telling God that you trust Him to handle the disrespect. You trust Him to work things out for your good, even when you can't see how. You are saying that your peace is not for sale, that no matter what others do or say, you will not let their actions dictate your emotional state. God works in the stillness. When you choose to remain silent, you are not just disengaging from the chaos, you are positioning yourself for God to move on your behalf. It's in that quiet place that He can fill you with His peace, that He can strengthen you and prepare you for what is next. Peace isn't just something that you protect from external forces. It is something that you invite into your life. When you preserve your peace, you create an environment where God can work more freely. The stillness becomes a fertile ground for growth, healing, and restoration. In moments of disrespect, it is easy to lose your peace, to allow the words and actions of others to shake your foundations. But the true test of your faith is not in how you react when things are going well, but how you respond when things are going wrong. Choosing peace, choosing to walk away in silence, is a reflection of your trust in God's sovereignty and His ability to work in every situation. It's a reminder that no matter what the world throws at you, your peace is unshakable because it is anchored in God, not in the actions of others. When you preserve your peace, you allow God to move in ways you never could on your own. And you open the door for Him to handle your battles in the best way possible. When you choose silence, you are also embracing an opportunity for personal growth. It's easy to get caught up in the emotions of the moment and react impulsively, but choosing to walk away in silence forces you to pause and reflect. It is in these moments of stillness that you are able to evaluate your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. You are allowing yourself the space to assess what is truly important and what is not worth your emotional energy. It's in these moments that you begin to see the bigger picture and to realize that your responses to disrespect will determine not just the outcome of that particular situation, but also the way you grow as a person. The process of walking away and choosing silence is transformative because it encourages you to respond with wisdom, not emotion. It teaches you to control your impulses, to rise above knee-jerk reactions, and to wait for God's guidance before you speak or act. In the face of disrespect, it can feel as if every fiber of your being is urging you to defend yourself or to make your voice heard. But in choosing to be silent, you are learning to align your actions with a higher purpose. You are learning to let go of the need for validation from others and instead choosing to trust that your value is rooted in something far greater, your identity in God. Walking away in silence also provides a chance to evaluate your own heart. Disrespect can often trigger wounds or unresolved issues from the past. It's a painful reminder of moments when you felt overlooked, devalued, or misunderstood. But by choosing silence, you allow God to work within you, helping you to heal and grow. It's a moment of self-reflection where you can examine whether you are holding on to bitterness or resentment from past experiences. God uses these moments to help you cleanse your heart, to let go of the pain that has accumulated over time, and to make room for His peace. Personal growth comes when you acknowledge your feelings, but choose not to let them control you. You learn that your emotional state does not have to be governed by external circumstances, but is instead anchored in your inner strength and your faith in God's timing. As you walk away in silence, you are also strengthening your ability to rise above the actions of others. Life will always bring people who will disrespect you, misunderstand you, or attempt to bring you down. But each time you choose to stay silent, you are reinforcing your ability to respond with grace and maturity. You are proving to yourself that you are not swayed by the opinions or actions of others. Your self-worth is not dependent on the approval or respect of those around you. Instead, your worth comes from your relationship with God. And as you grow in understanding this truth, you become less concerned with how others treat you and more focused on how you respond. You develop a resilience that is unshakable, and your growth is evident not only in the way you handle disrespect, but in the way you handle all of life's challenges. Fun fact, in those quiet moments when you choose not to engage, you are also learning the art of patience. Patience is a virtue that often goes overlooked, especially in our fast-paced world where we expect things to happen quickly. But patience is a crucial component of growth. When you are able to sit with your discomfort, to remain silent in the face of disrespect, you are developing patience, not just with others, but with yourself. You learn to trust the process, to wait for the right moment, and to let go of the need for immediate resolution. Patience is a key element in God's work within you. He uses these times of waiting to prepare you for greater things, to develop your character, and to teach you to trust in His perfect timing. Choosing silence also teaches you the importance of self-restraint. In a world where everyone seems eager to have their say, where opinions and voices clash, the ability to remain calm and composed is a rare and invaluable skill. When you face disrespect, it is natural to want to defend yourself, to prove your point, or to retaliate. But the ability to control your reaction, to step away, and to trust that God has your back demonstrates a maturity that is cultivated over time. Each time you choose silence, you are building your ability to respond with wisdom and restraint. You are learning that not every battle is worth fighting, and that sometimes the greatest strength comes from walking away. Through this process, you also develop the skill of discernment. In moments of disrespect, it's easy to react out of anger or frustration. But when you choose silence, you open yourself up to God's discernment. You begin to see the situation more clearly without the distortion of emotion clouding your judgment. You can see whether the person's disrespect is truly an attack on your character or whether it's a reflection of their own pain or insecurities. You begin to recognize when a situation requires a response and when it's better to remain silent, allowing God to work in the background. Discernment is a gift that allows you to navigate life's challenges with wisdom and understanding. And as you grow in this ability, you find that you are better equipped to handle all of life's complexities. Finally, walking away in silence forces you to trust God on a deeper level. When you choose silence, you are acknowledging that you don't have all the answers and you don't need to. You are placing your trust in God's ability to work out the situation according to His will. And this act of trust becomes a cornerstone of your spiritual growth. As you let go of the need for control, you allow God to take the lead, to handle the battles that you cannot, and to guide you in the right direction. In this moment, your faith is strengthened and you grow closer to God. When you choose silence in the face of disrespect, you are choosing to trust in God's timing and His justice. This is not a passive action. It is an active form of faith. The world often encourages us to take matters into our own hands, to fight for our rights, to assert our dignity and honor by force. But God's ways are different. He calls us to wait, to trust, and to believe that He is a God of justice who will make all things right in His perfect timing. This decision to remain silent rather than reacting in anger or frustration is an act of deep trust in God's sovereignty over every situation in our lives. God is aware of the disrespect you face. He sees every hurt, every injustice, and every attempt to undermine you. And while it may feel like the world has forgotten you or that your suffering is unnoticed, nothing escapes His attention. His timing is always perfect, even when we can't see the full picture. You may be tempted to act out of frustration, to immediately confront those who disrespect you, or to demand an explanation. But God is asking you to trust that He will deal with the situation in His own way at the right time. His actions are always guided by wisdom and love, even when we don't understand the process. And so, when you choose silence, you allow space for God to move in the situation. By not reacting, you create an opening for God to work, to soften hearts, and to orchestrate circumstances that will lead to your vindication. This doesn't mean you passively sit back and do nothing, but that you trust that God will guide you to take the right action at the right moment. When you remain silent, you are declaring that you do not need to defend yourself, that God is your defender, and that His plans are greater than any immediate gratification you might seek by reacting in the heat of the moment. God is capable of doing more in an instant than we can accomplish through our own efforts. And sometimes the best thing we can do is step back, wait, and trust that He is already at work. In this moment of silence, you are also demonstrating patience, a quality that God values deeply. Patience is the willingness to wait for God's perfect timing, even when everything within you wants to act or to make something happen quickly. When we rush ahead, when we try to force a resolution or take matters into our own hands, we can create even more chaos, or we may miss God's perfect plan altogether. But by choosing silence and waiting for God to take the lead, we are learning to trust not only in His ability to handle the situation, but also in His perfect timing. God's timing is always aligned with His will for our lives, and His will is always good. So when we trust Him and allow Him to act, we are aligning ourselves with His divine purpose, even when it seems difficult to understand why the wait is necessary. In those quiet moments, when you refrain from reacting you are also creating a space for God to heal your heart. Disrespect can hurt deeply, and sometimes the wound is so fresh that it feels unbearable. But God knows the pain you are experiencing. He understands your hurt, and He promises to heal your broken heart. The silence gives you a moment to process your emotions, to turn to God in prayer, and to allow Him to comfort you. When we react immediately, we can often make decisions based on hurt, anger, or pain. But when we wait, when we choose silence, we create an opportunity for God to heal those wounds before we take any action. It is in these moments of quiet reflection that God can mend our hearts, restore our peace, and prepare us for the next steps He has planned for us. Choosing to trust God's timing also means recognizing that God's justice may not always look like our idea of justice. We may think that the best way to handle disrespect is by confronting the person, proving a point, or demanding an apology. But God's justice is far greater and more comprehensive than our limited understanding. His justice does not only seek to correct the wrongs in the situation, but also to bring about healing, reconciliation, and growth. God's justice is always aimed at bringing His children closer to Him, refining their character, and ensuring that His will is done in the earth. While we might desire immediate retribution, God's justice works in ways that we may not even be able to see. Trusting God's timing means trusting that He will work everything together for your good, even when it doesn't happen in the way you expect or on your preferred timeline. This act of waiting for God's active mode is a powerful demonstration of surrender. It is saying, God, I trust you more than I trust my own ability to handle this. It is acknowledging that you cannot control every outcome, that you are not in charge of how others treat you, but that you know that God is in control of everything. When we choose silence, we are surrendering our will to God's will. We are saying, I will not try to fight this battle on my own. I will wait for your timing, and I will trust that you will act in the way that is best for me. This act of surrender is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of strength. It takes a deep-rooted trust in God to say, I will wait for you to act, knowing that you have a purpose in this situation that is greater than what I can see. And by waiting for God's active mode, you also create space for God to transform your perspective. The situation that has caused you hurt, frustration, or anger can be an opportunity for spiritual growth. As you remain silent, trusting God to handle the disrespect, He can help you see things through a different lens. Perhaps the person who disrespected you is struggling with their own insecurities or pain. Perhaps the situation is an opportunity for you to grow in humility, patience, or wisdom. God has the ability to work in every situation. And even in the midst of disrespect, He can help you grow spiritually and emotionally. Trusting in God's timing and waiting for His active mode is a key part of spiritual maturity. It's not just about letting God handle the external situation. It's about allowing God to work within you, refining your character and strengthening your faith. Each moment of silence, each moment of waiting is a moment of deep trust in God's sovereign plan for your life. And when you learn to wait patiently for His action, you open the door for Him to work powerfully in your life, transforming not only your circumstances, but also your heart and mind. Choosing silence in the face of disrespect is a powerful act of humility. When you remain silent, you are not allowing your pride to dictate your actions, but rather you are surrendering your right to defend yourself or prove a point. This act of humility can be difficult because our natural instinct is to rise up, to defend our honor, and to assert our dignity when we are disrespected. But when you choose silence, You are demonstrating that your identity is not rooted in the opinions of others or in how they treat you. Instead, you are choosing to find your worth in something far greater, the love and purpose that God has for you. Humility is not about thinking less of yourself. It's about thinking of yourself less. It's about acknowledging that you don't need to be the center of every conversation or every situation. Humility frees you from the need to always be right or to have the last word. When you choose silence in the face of disrespect, you are acknowledging that the need to be understood or validated by others is not as important as maintaining your peace and trusting God's wisdom. You recognize that your value is not determined by how others perceive you, but by who you are in God's eyes. And so that's the natural work that God wants you to do. In these moments of silence, God works in you to cultivate a spirit of meekness. Meekness is often misunderstood as weakness, but in reality, it is a strength that comes from knowing that you don't have to prove anything. Meekness is the ability to endure hardship, to withstand disrespect without retaliating or seeking revenge. It's the inner strength that allows you to choose peace over conflict and to trust that God will fight your battles. Animals, when you remain silent, you are showing that you have the strength to rise above the situation, to remain composed, and to not let your emotions control your actions. You are choosing to be meek, to let go of the need for validation, and to trust that God will uphold your dignity in His perfect timing. Choosing silence in these situations also allows you to see the situation through a lens of grace. It is easy to get caught up in the desire for justice, especially when we feel disrespected. Our human nature wants to see others get what they deserve when they wrong us. But God calls us to show grace, to extend mercy, even when it's not deserved. By walking away in silence, you are acknowledging that while others may disrespect you, your response is not to bring them down, but to rise above it with grace. You are choosing to let go of the need for revenge and allowing God to handle the situation. This is an act of humility because it requires you to trust in God's ability to bring justice in His way and in His time. In moments of disrespect, when we react impulsively, we often cause more harm than good. The words we say, the actions we take can escalate the situation, further hurting ourselves and others. But when we choose silence, we create a space for peace to enter. It is in this space that God can work, not only in our hearts, but in the hearts of those around us. By choosing humility and silence, we are providing an opportunity for healing. You may not see the results immediately, but by humbling yourself, you open the door for God to do a deeper work, both in you and in the person who may have wronged you. Humility leads to reconciliation, to mending broken relationships, and to creating an environment where God's love and grace can transform hearts. Humility also teaches us that not every battle is ours to fight. It's easy to believe that we must defend our honor at all costs, that we must make sure others know our worth. But when you walk away in silence, you are acknowledging that some battles are better left to God. God is the ultimate judge, and He knows exactly how to handle every situation. His justice is perfect, and His timing is flawless. When we take matters into our own hands, we often complicate things or create unnecessary conflict. But when we trust God and remain humble, we give Him the space to work, allowing His justice and His will to be done. Humility teaches us to step back and trust that God will work in ways we cannot see, and His ways are always best. In a world that celebrates self-promotion and the need to defend one's image at all costs, Humility is often overlooked, but it is humility that positions us to experience God's grace and favor. When we humble ourselves before God and allow Him to fight our battles, He lifts us up. He honors those who walk in humility, and He promises to exalt the humble in due time. By choosing silence, you are humbling yourself before God, allowing Him to handle the situation in His own perfect way. Humility is not about allowing others to walk all over you, but about knowing your worth in God's eyes and trusting that He will bring justice and healing. By choosing humility and silence in the face of disrespect, you also create the opportunity for growth. God uses moments like these to refine our character. Humility is a key trait of spiritual maturity, and it is through moments of disrespect that God can shape us more into His likeness. He uses these opportunities to teach us patience, grace, and the importance of trusting in His will. As we grow in humility, we become more like Christ, who endured disrespect and humiliation without seeking revenge. His silence in the face of His accusers is the ultimate example of humility. By choosing silence, we are following His example and allowing God to work in us, shaping us into the people He has called us to be. Humility, when chosen in the face of disrespect, not only leads to personal growth, but also opens the door for God to move in ways we cannot anticipate. It is through humility that we make room for God to work. It is through humility that we learn to trust Him more deeply, to surrender our rights, and to know that in His time, He will bring the justice, healing, and restoration that we need. Humility, therefore, is not just a passive response to disrespect. It is a powerful way for us to grow spiritually, to align ourselves with God's will, and to trust that He is always working for our good. When you walk away in silence, you are not simply retreating from a moment of disrespect. You are choosing to trust in God's process of transformation and restoration. This silence is not a passive act. It is an active decision to let go of your own need to control the situation and to yield to God's plan, knowing that He works in ways beyond our understanding. God often uses silence as a means of deepening our character, refining our hearts, and strengthening our spirits. In those moments when it seems like the world has forgotten you, or when you feel the sting of being disrespected, silence is where God does His most profound work. God sees when we choose to respond to disrespect with patience, when we resist the temptation to lash out or to defend our honor. It is in these quiet moments that God can shape us. He is crafting our character to reflect His image more clearly. Every moment of silence becomes a building block in our journey toward becoming more like Christ. Just as Christ endured humiliation, abuse, and disrespect without retaliating, God calls us to do the same. To trust that He is at work even when it seems like nothing is happening. When we choose silence in these situations, we are expressing trust in God's timing and His ability to handle the situation far better than we ever could. The act of walking away in silence is also a profound statement of faith. It is saying, I trust that God knows what is best for me. I trust that He will defend my honor in a way that will bring glory to Him, not me. It is easy to think that we need to handle everything ourselves, to stand up for ourselves in every situation. But silence forces us to step aside and let God take the lead. This is where God's active mode comes into play. His active mode is when He works behind the scenes, handling situations, softening hearts, and moving mountains in ways we can't see or understand. When we are silent, we allow God to move in ways that are far beyond our comprehension. We might not see the immediate results, but we can trust that He is working on our behalf. We might not see the immediate results, but we can trust that He is working on our behalf. This act of waiting in silence aligns us with God's eternal perspective. God is not confined by time, and He sees things from a higher vantage point. While we might be focused on the moment of disrespect or the immediate conflict, God sees the broader picture. He knows what is ahead and how the situation will unfold in the future. Our silence is an acknowledgement that God's understanding is superior to ours. We don't have to rush into action. We don't have to force things to happen. God's perfect timing is always at work. We may feel the pain and frustration of being disrespected in the moment, but by choosing silence, we are exercising faith in God's ability to bring about healing and restoration at the right time. In these moments, when we choose silence and allow God to work, we also learn the importance of patience. Patience is not simply about waiting for a solution. It's about enduring hardship with faith that God will provide in His time. Our society teaches us to want instant results, instant validation, and immediate justice. But God often works in ways that require patience. And in that waiting, He builds something in us that would not be built through quick fixes. Patience, as an act of silence, teaches us to endure with faith, to trust that God's timing is far more effective than our rushed decisions. Waiting in silence also gives us the space to reflect and reassess the situation. Sometimes our emotions can cloud our judgment, and in the heat of the moment, we might say things we regret or make decisions we later wish we hadn't. But when we step back and remain silent, we create the opportunity for God to speak to us. He gives us wisdom to understand the situation from His perspective and to respond in a way that aligns with His will. Silence helps us find clarity amidst confusion, peace amidst chaos. It teaches us to stop and listen to the still, small voice of God that guides us toward His perfect will. End quote. Another aspect of waiting for God's active mode is understanding that our silence is an act of spiritual maturity. It's easy to react impulsively, especially when we feel disrespected. But maturity comes when we learn to pause, to breathe, and to choose a response that is rooted in peace, not in emotion. It's about recognizing that while our emotions are valid, they are not always the best guide for our actions. By choosing silence, we are choosing to respond not based on how we feel in the moment, but on the peace that comes from knowing that God is in control. We are choosing to allow the Holy Spirit to guide our actions rather than being driven by our own impulses. When we wait in silence, God's active mode also works in us to strengthen our spiritual resilience. He builds endurance in us through these moments of difficulty. It is in the waiting, in the silence, that our faith is strengthened. Just as muscles are strengthened by resistance, our spiritual resilience is strengthened through trials. God allows these moments of tension to prepare us for greater challenges, to equip us for the next phase of our spiritual journey. Each time we choose silence, we become stronger, more capable of handling future trials with grace and confidence in God's faithfulness. Finally, by waiting for God's active mode, we allow Him to bring transformation not only to us, but also to the situation. When we choose silence, we trust that God is not just working on our behalf, but also working on the hearts of those who have disrespected us. God is a God of reconciliation, and He can soften the hearts of others. Through our silence, we create the space for God to move in their hearts, bringing healing and restoration. We may not see this immediately, but we trust that God's work is not limited by our ability to see it in the present moment. He is always at work, and his work is always for our good and his glory. So in those moments when we are disrespected, when we are tempted to react, we must remember that silence is not passive. It is an act of faith, trust, and spiritual maturity. It is in silence that God's active mode is most fully engaged. We trust that he is working on our behalf, shaping us, and moving mountains in ways we cannot see. In the face of disrespect and the temptation to react, one of the most powerful things you can do is to allow God to handle the situation according to his will and his timing. This is where the true essence of walking away in silence comes into play. It's not simply about turning your back on the situation, but about recognizing that in silence, you position yourself to see God's active mode come into full effect. This is not a form of retreat or weakness, but a stance of strength and deep trust in God's sovereignty. In the moment when disrespect hits and emotions run high, the natural human instinct is to retaliate, to defend, to make sure that the wrongdoer knows the hurt they've caused. We want to make sure that justice is served. However, what we fail to recognize in those heated moments is that God's justice, his righteousness, and his power far exceed anything we could achieve through our own actions. When we decide to walk away quietly, we are surrendering the situation to God's capable hands. This is a decision that shows maturity, a deep understanding that while we cannot always control the circumstances, we can control how we respond. And in our silence, we actively release the weight of the situation into God's capable hands. God's justice is not based on our idea of fairness. It is rooted in love, grace, and ultimate wisdom. He sees the bigger picture and his timing is perfect. When we step back, we allow him the space to step forward. This is what is meant by God's active mode. It's in those moments when we choose silence and trust in his plan that God begins to move in ways that we may never fully understand. He is working on the hearts of those who have wronged us, softening them, convicting them, and perhaps even changing their perspective. He is also working within us, building patience, humility, and strength, right? A God is always present in our lives, even when we cannot immediately feel his presence. His ways are higher than ours, and he operates with an eternal perspective. Our role is not to take vengeance, but to wait on God, knowing that he will bring about justice in the best way possible. His justice might not look like the kind of justice we expect, but it will always be perfect. The silence we practice in those times of disrespect is a profound way of letting God take charge, trusting that he will right the wrongs and make things work together for our good. In the quiet, God's active mode can move mountains. He doesn't need our help to do it. When we take a step back, we give room for God to work in ways we cannot imagine. The silence becomes a sacred space where we stop trying to control outcomes and instead give God full authority to act on our behalf. God's heart is for restoration, for reconciliation, and for healing. And he will bring these things into our lives in his perfect timing. Moreover, this time of silence and waiting does not mean that we are inactive. In fact, in this moment, we are doing the most important thing. We are surrendering our need to control, and we are placing our trust in God's ability to bring about his perfect plan. The more we choose silence, the more we align ourselves with God's greater purpose. We are choosing to say, I trust you, God, to handle this for me. This is a declaration of faith that goes beyond words. It is a deeply spiritual act of surrender. When God moves, he doesn't just work on the surface level. He transforms hearts, minds, and entire situations. By walking away and waiting in silence, you are not only giving God the opportunity to handle the situation, but you are also positioning yourself for a greater outpouring of His grace. His active mode isn't just about resolving conflict. It's about bringing peace to your heart, healing to your soul, and restoration to relationships. It's about the long-term work that God is doing in your life, making you more resilient, more spiritually aware, and more in tune with His will. As you wait, know that God's active mode is working in you and for you. You may not see the immediate results, but rest assured, God is never inactive. His plan is already in motion, and His work is already being done. What you are doing in silence is allowing God the space to move in ways that will exceed your expectations. Trust that He will fight your battles, heal your wounds, and bring restoration to every area of your life. In silence, we allow God to do what only He can do: transform lives, restore relationships, and bring about justice in ways that are beyond our comprehension. And when He does, you will be able to look back and recognize that His way was far greater than anything you could have achieved on your own.